Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show, we're talking about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of Preacher, a fantastic season finale. So much stuff went down in this episode. Let's break it down bit by bit. I love what they did with the opening. It's such an interesting thing. Well, for one, it sets up the fact is both God and Satan have had an eye on Jesse for a long time. Once again, why? I mean, to be fair, maybe they know the grand scale of things. Like, Satan already made that clear that he had eyes on Jesse for a while, but God was too. It seems like both of them were there keeping an eye on him, because I think it's because of that aspect of Jesse that Genesis likes, because he could easily go either way. He could be a great saint or a great sinner, and I think because Jesse borderlines that balance, hence why Genesis likes him in the first place, because it's like, oh, you're a true representation of who I am. That I think both of them took an interest in him, and they kind of represent the two different sides of paths his life can go down, and the struggle he has inside too. Once again, just kind of making the whole comparison between him and Genesis that much stronger, the whole balance between them. But nevertheless, he couldn't kill his grandma back then, even though he wanted to and had the chance to, because she talked about the fact is that he wouldn't do it because he's acting too much like a custard, because of what because he's struggling to, because of all the bad he's done in his life, trying to do as much good as he can to balance the scales. That's why he wouldn't go as far. That's why the custard side of him tries, because his dad always told him, be a good guy. That's why that always resonated with him, because for one, it was his dad's last wish, but also at the same time, it's because for him, he thinks as long as he's able to balance out the bad in his life with good, then maybe there's some hope for him in, the afterlife, in heaven and stuff like that. But man, I love Jesse leaving. He's like, I'm leaving. And at that same time, present day Jesse's walking forward and he's like, you should have killed her. He's like, well, now's your chance. I'm like, that was so beautifully done. It's kind of as younger Jesse is walking, it's kind of got this sepia, not sepia. Is that the term for it? That filter, just kind of this grayish filter to it. And then you have Jesse in this kind of brighter color, and I thought that was so beautifully done, and how they stylized that was so neat. Both of them, one leaving Angelville, the other coming in. I thought that was so interesting. Side note, holds no bars using Genesis the moment he steps in, telling TC to shoot himself. I was like, oh man, TC must be glad he was pointing it towards his foot, that Jesse didn't specify where to shoot. It just shoot, so he shot himself, but lucky it was just the foot. But him and Jody go to, because he's like, I'm not even going, I could use Genesis to take you out, but it's nah, me and you, we got history, we're going to make this personal. And it turned into a fist fight. It's yeah, Jesse kept up with it. He didn't use Genesis the entire fight. I think Jody probably did that on purpose, reminding Jesse about his dad, because he knew Jesse had that fight in him. He knew eventually someday Jesse would beat him, and he kind of felt like this was probably the day. He's he knew that would set Jesse off and fuel Jesse anger, and Jesse went after him. That was a good fight. Like I said, it's not a lot of times that you get to see Jesse kind of go full-blown fist fighting like that, but this is one of those big times, and he took him down, dude. And even before he dies, Jody's like, I'm proud of you. And I love it that Jesse's like, okay, I'm going to burn this place down. Come on. And TC's like, wait, you're not going to kill me? He's like, I don't hate you that much. It's yeah. I mean, TC's been mixed up in his Angelville thing, but he's never done anything to him Miss Marie and Jody. Jody killed his dad. Miss Marie killed his mom. But TC's like, yeah, you've done some terrible shit because you got mixed up in all this stuff. But hey, you can come. But he's like, no, because for him, Angelville is all he knows. So it's if he leaves, then there won't be anything for him. He's like, you sure? He's like, yeah. It was good seeing you again, little Jesse. And it's there's this bittersweetness to it. I also did like the fact is he's doing a little speech that Jesse does inside of the tombs and everything. He's I always wanted to do that. But it's kind of sad, because I was hoping, oh, maybe TC can come. It's yeah, because this is kind of all he knows. If this world is going to be burned, he's going to burn with it. Then it comes down to his grandma, and it's yo, get rid of the deal you made with me. Boom, free me of my deal, free of Tulip. And it's yep, that's all done. But she has her, because I was wondering, what does she have that made her so confident? And it turns out, if she dies, the moment Jesse dies, at whatever point in time he dies, he will go to hell because of the new deal they made with Satan, which kind of makes you wonder, where does that deal stand later on? Obviously, get to it when I get to it, but they're when that's all said and done, how does that deal stack now? I guess it still stays in place, but the new guy kind of takes over. Like I said, I'll kind of dive into that when I get to that point, but I thought that was kind of pretty neat, and it kind of made Jesse feel conflicted. So he made her destroy all the souls and everything, and he was going to leave it. And he's like, yeah, I wanted it in, and his younger version was like, doesn't feel like it, because it's like, nah, after everything his grandma's done, letting her be around even a little bit longer is not fair. Like, after all the BS, all the pain she's caused to not just you and your family, having ripped it apart, killed every member of your family, she's also just a terrible person in general. And Jesse hooks her up to the machine and everything. She's like, you'll burn. He's like, well, you'll burn first. And so I was like, yeah. Just kind of like, it's kind of interesting because I feel like, because I saw images of how she looks in a comic book, like the actress who plays her, like, is a very good representation of how she looks in a comic. But I feel like how she looks at the very end, I think it's a little closer to how she looks in the comic books. I don't know whether that's the aesthetic they were going for or not, or whether that's just how she looks at the end of her story in the comic books too, you know? But I feel like, because she's a lot like unhumanly skinny in the comic books, just because she's so old and brittle. Like, once again, we don't know exactly how old she is, because with those souls, Jesse was like, you could have lived another 100 years. But Angelville is no more. I guess nobody's really running the soul game now. I mean, I guess technically the Grail still is, because they have the whole Happy Soul Go-Go, so like they still run it, but the Boyds are gone now. That she didn't make the deal seem like she was going to go to heaven after the end of this all, but I guess it's still in the end because of it. She, even with the new deal in place, like, she will now go to hell anyway, so that's definitely going to be interesting. I mean, because, like, remember, she said Jesse's mom is there, but she gobbled up her soul and sent her to hell. But it's like, how can you do that when you eat someone's soul? I mean, once again, I keep forgetting, like, the cowboy's there, so obviously, like, he fits, you know, so maybe she is really somewhere down there in hell. So maybe Jesse's grandma's down there now too. She's gonna be a new resident, so there's that. Then on the other side of things is Tulip loving it. Like, Tulip is fighting off Nazis, Eugene's fighting Hitler. It's like, yes, these are sentences that are coming out my mouth. It is amazing. And you have, like, it seemed like, based the way things were going, it looked like Sydney was whipping bullets away, but you also saw some limbs and like a head flying, so I'm assuming she's whipping off limbs too. And you have like the cowboys shooting people, and I'm like, these poor bastards, you're going up against the two most indestructible people. You can't do anything against them. And poor Rick and all his people get massacred. That slick move by Tulip, when there's like those two guys got the guns on her, she's kind of only got the knife, she's looking down. Secretly, she's got the gun and blows them away with one bullet. I was like, that's pretty neat. And she's looking at the gun all impressed. It's like, yo, Tulip's such a badass. And Eugene knocking Hitler out like that, I was like, that's pretty dope. But one thing I kept wondering too is like, why is Sydney talking mad shit? Because she's constantly being like, oh, what do you think about the crows pecking at your daughter's eyes and stuff like that? Was it before or after she died? I'm like, she kind of did the same thing last time. So I'm like, why are you talking such mad shit? Like, I don't know, maybe in some weird twisted sense, I guess she thought he'd never do anything, because he was always so like, oh, like kind of going along with everything, copacetic. But that's because he knew things were kind of like the way they've always been. But she said it herself, the rules have changed. So, but I was like, after having said something like that, why would you continuously taunt him like that? Like, I thought that was crazy. Also, apparently he has hellfire breath or something, because he heated up his knife with his own breath. I'm like, is that something everyone from hell can do? Or is he just a special case because of being the special badass and terrible, terrible being that he is, that he was able to do that? I don't know. Stuck his knife in that fuel tank of the tank, blew it up, and then proceeded to rip Sydney's eyes out. So it's also an interesting thing, because like tying this all with the God thing, it also shows you just how powerful he is in comparison to everyone else, because everyone else was frozen. The cowboy was frozen. Even Sydney, the angel of death, was still frozen. Like, shows you just how the power scales. But him being like, oh, like he's going to forgive Tulip for her mistakes and stuff like that. And she's like, yeah, I've made mistakes, but I'm going to own my mistakes. I don't need your forgiveness. I've gotten this far without your forgiveness. And because what God really wants is Jesse not, like, we still don't know what his grand plans are, but it is like what Tulip thought. It's like the entire time he was trying to keep Jesse out of the way, got this whole Angelville thing happening. He set everything in motion so that Jesse would have no choice but to go to Angelville, so that he'd get caught up in this drama with his grandma and be forced to be there. Because the longer Jesse's dealing with his family drama, the less likely he's chasing after God and getting in the way of his grand plans and stuff. So there's that. Which Tulip was like, nah, bump that. I'm not going to take your side. Then he warns her about the Cassidy thing. What's also interesting about the ladies that are with him too, like, are they human too? Does he just choose not to affect them? Because like the lady walks over, he's like, yeah, I see you. It's like, just give me a second, essentially. And it's like, okay, so the ladies aren't affected by your powers just because you choose it, like who gets affected by your powers? Or are they some kind of supernatural thing themselves? Who knows? I mean, once again, it's the world of preachers, so you can't chalk it up to be like, oh yeah, they're just regular girls. I mean, everyone in this world accept a lot of weird and crazy stuff just because of the way the world is. But maybe it's just kind of like oh yeah, like, you know, they know. It's like, oh yeah, he's God. We're just like hanging out. We're just like banging and stuff like that. That's how I chalk it up. But who knows in the end? All the while, Cassidy's dealing with his own situation. I love how he played out that Carrie situation because he still hasn't used it. Maybe he tossed it out, but I thought that's what was happening there. Remember, he still had that love potion from Jesse's grandma that he never used on Tulip. Maybe he threw it away, but I could have sworn he still had it on him. But I know he never used it on Tulip, but it's like, didn't he still have it on him? I thought that's what he was going to do, get Icarius like love smitten with him and then bite him. But it turns out, nope. He had a long play plan. He bit Doris. Doris changed everyone else because she found out Cassidy was telling the truth because no one she called contacted him. Everyone proceeded to bite him, which would have been interesting because it's like, oh, what would that mean going forward? I guess unless you get the full dose of the bite, it won't mean as much. Because it seemed like the only person who didn't eat any of Icarius was Cassidy. And then part of me is like, yeah, it kind of ended up being the way I thought it would anyway. Like, oh, he's surrounded by all these vampires. It's like, oh, he's got his own team and stuff. Because Icarius is talking about how the fact is he'll be all alone. I'm like, oh, man. It's like, no, he's got a family and stuff. And then that quickly goes, oh, no, never mind. Because Hoover shows up. I'm like, oh, he's lying out of his teeth. It's like, what? It's like, obviously they're here for Cassidy, but he offers him the umbrella. I was like, oh, is it because Cassidy did save you and you're trying to save him for that reason? It's like, no, you're doing it because you're following orders. Because it's like, yes, of course. Hoover is a loyal corporate man. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I was like, oh man, that sucks. Everyone dies except for Kevin and Doris, which part of me was kind of hoping they would roll with Tulip later on, but they don't. That's such a shame. But it's sad because I guess to a certain extent what Icarius said was true because now Cassidy's back to being by himself. I am still curious to see what goes down with the whole Doris and Kevin thing, whether anything comes from that. It's just kind of like they're kind of off on their own now too. They can't really go out right now because like literally the top of their house was ripped up. So like I was like, oh, that's brutal. Everyone's running by burning, and it's like poor Cassidy being captured by them again. Dude, it's crazy. Then we proceed to like Tulip finding out. So she's obviously meeting up with Jesse later on, and it's like, let's go. Boom. They're off on their journey. Obviously, she didn't tell him at the end, but she could have texted him at some point in time. So it's like, yeah, she knows about Cassidy, so they're most likely going to be trying to find Cassidy while also sticking it to God. Because Tulip realizes, like, God was like, oh yeah, there'll be consequences for this. So once again, because Tulip didn't accept his help and accept his promise, he set things in motion to make it so that would happen. I mean, hell, for all we know, he might have sent the Grail there directly too, because it's like, for him, you know, heaven is pretty in tight with all of that. I mean, to be fair, it seems like he's very separate from heaven because at no point in time have we seen any other angels pop up. Like, other than like Fiora and DeBlanc, those are the only angels we've ever had experience with. There's a whole situation at the end where Cassidy's like, that person above him has wings. It's like, is that a captured angel? But like, no angel we've seen so far has had wings. Maybe the higher up you are in the ranks, more likely you have wings or something like that. Because at no point did DeBlanc or Fiora show there. So maybe that's something else entirely. I didn't, get a good enough look. Maybe that could have been some other like mystical creature or something. We'll wait and see. Yeah, I mean, so I doubt that. It's probably just kind of like, he, like I said, it seems like they kind of work the scenes. Like, it's kind of interesting because this episode kind of shows you that they do kind of like orchestrate how the world works, the dominoes affecting. Like, they're a lot more hands-on, like both him and Satan about certain things. Obviously, I'll get to that in a second. So he probably went in there kind of like put the thought, I'm blanking, Hare's mind or something like that. So, but for one, I think it's so messed up that he killed Hoover like that. Because Hoover's like, oh, I gotta wear this. He's like, oh, you're wearing that to make fun of me. It's like, no, I'm wearing this because I'm a vampire. He's like, you're a vampire? I thought you were joking. He's like, no, I won't let this affect my job. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And he knocks the hat off and lets Hoover burn. I'm like, what? I was like, oh, that sucks so much. You're so mean for that. He's like, you idiot. I guess it's because they are kind of like the pure group that they are. He's like, did you really think we'd be okay with a vampire joining us? I guess at no point did you think, like, not really think much of him holding the umbrella up. I guess you didn't think too much of it. So... But I guess that's the reason why. And Featherstone not really caring too much. And it's like, oh yeah, find a new Hoover. So that's definitely interesting. But now you have the whole thing of like, I guess with the Allfather gone, like he's the next in line to take over everything. Or at the very least, he decided, hey, I'm going to take over. So it seems like the way they've got it set up, like he has full control over the Grail. He has no one. I mean, luckily for him, Jesse ended up taking out the Allfather. So that kind of paved the way for him. So I'm curious how he's going to handle this, because we did see a few Humper dudes kind of walking around, so it kind of removes that Messiah thing. He might find a different route for that. Like right now, he's more focused on torturing Jesse because he doesn't want Jesse as a Messiah. Because like, you screwed me over too many times. I just want you dead. Which we now know if Jesse dies, he's going straight to hell. So there's going to be that. It also makes you wonder what happens if he goes to hell with Genesis. Like, would Genesis follow him, or would Genesis leave and find a new host? Like now that Jesse was in hell, you know, it makes you wonder about that type of thing. Because is it tied to his physical body, which then is that situation of like, technically even in hell you have a physical body. Apparently it's a whole thing, you know. All the while talking about the hell situation, talking about the fact is that you know, Satan apparently was the one. Well, he's saying God's the one that made the decision of like, oh yeah, pecking the eyes out of your daughter, like the whole crow thing. That was his idea, which is why I was talking about the fact is it seemed like they are a lot more hands on than you would think. But I was wondering, it's like, is he really going to do it? And he shoots Satan in the head, dude. I'm like, for one, as powerful as those damn guns are, why would you be stupid enough to let him have them? I guess the argument is that Satan is so big-headed that he wouldn't think anyone will be stupid enough to do that. Because also, I'm sure, like, killing Jesse is his main focus, and probably Satan being around probably would have gotten in his way, loopholes and stuff like that. It's like, I would have still had to do more of your bidding, but for him, it's like, you said it yourself, the rules have changed. So it's kind of interesting because all those bats come flying out of Satan's head. I'm curious if that's going to manifest into something or not, whether that, like, means he can come back in a new form or a new body or something. Does he have to regrow a new body or something like that? But it's like, man, are those pistols stupid powerful. Like, where, like, it seemed like they were probably regular guns before, but the moment he went to hell, like, I mean, those things they are supernatural, his guns and his sword. So it's like, how that happens, I guess it's one of those things we don't need to know, just know that they happen. Because it's like, I mean, we already knew those bullets were supernatural just because of like the impact and the way they blew up bodies in season 2, like especially like in the first episode and stuff. We saw the impact of those bullets, but to think they take down Satan makes you wonder how they fare against God, which I assume he's going after God next too, just because it's like, yeah, what you did. I mean, I guess to force God to take him to heaven, but he knows the rules aren't that way, so maybe it's going to be about punishing him, which now we've got 2 people heading towards God, which just means that him and Jesse are going to cross paths. Plus, Eugene's coming too, because he's like, yeah, you don't belong here, which is kind of like, oh, so there is some semblance of a good guy in the cowboy for him to bring Eugene along, which Eugene's going to go with him because like, Jesse's still alive, the man who sent me here, the man who left me here. And it's like, yeah, remember, Jesse kind of let that drop. He dropped that ball, even though at the end of season 1, he was like, I hadn't forgotten about you. You sure as hell did, because at no point in time did you try to get, you know, people, you met people from hell in season 2 when they came to get the cowboy, and no point did you ever bring up, you know, Eugene. So that's probably another spiraling thing, because I'm curious to see what they do, because Eugene's thinking he has some grand purpose in all of this. That might be his grand purpose. Amongst everyone's attempt to kill Jesse, it might be the twist that in the end, Eugene is the one who ends up killing Jesse, sending him to hell. Because it'd be poetic just as because it's like, you sent me to hell, now it's my job to send you to hell. I know I'm killing you, but I don't know that I'm sending you to hell. Or maybe Jesse will tell him that. I don't know. I'm curious to see what that meeting's going to look like, dude. And then, lo and behold, who decides to take over hell? Freaking Hitler. Because I was like, I did not see anybody's story playing out like that. So I was like, oh, so Hitler is the new Satan. Okay, this is the world of Preacher, dude. Holy crap. He's the big boss now. And I would assume because he is in that position, we will be continuing to see him more. Sydney having to adjust to her no eyeball thing. I wonder, is there any remedying that situation? Will it heal after a while, or did like the cowboy completely screw her over forever? So I'm wondering, we'll get any more looks at hell going forward, maybe some looks at heaven, like what other supernatural creatures we're going to go down this route with going forward. I have no idea. At the time of me recording this, it still is up in the air whether or not Preacher's coming back for a fourth season. I really hope so, especially after everything playing out the way it has. It's like, I'm so interested to see what season 4 is going to be. The show gets crazier and wilder and just mind-blowing with every season. It just gets better and better. It was already an amazing show, but it gets better and better season to season. This is also, once again, coming from someone who's never read the original comic book / graphic novel that the series is based on. So I'm so interested to see, like, I'm really hoping that they do come back for a fourth season, because I'd love to see what they do with it. What all these players coming together will mean and what it will look like. Because Jesse's, this season was mainly about Jesse's past, but it's like, who else's past is going to come up? Like, will we get a little bit more on Cassie and stuff like that? Because his whole situation, it was a bit chunk of this season was about the whole vampire thing, but it's like, once again, we still don't know much about Cassie's past. I mean, season 2 delved into it with the whole Dennis situation, his son and everything. Tulip, we got a little peek at it because of that whole purgatory situation, so... But beyond that, I don't know if that's something we're going to dive into as well, because it might not be something, because I don't know if their past or anything that really got delved into very highly in the comic books or not. Like, I know, like, the whole Anvil situation is something that was only specific to the show in the sense that they dived into it. So I'll be curious to see, like, whether, like, probably still get more little pieces of their past going forward. But that might just be part of the comic book storyline anyway, I don't know. And, the ultimate question, too, is, like, what is God's great plan that he has in his plan that he feels like Jesse would get in his way? That it is kind of interesting, because even as powerful as he is, he knows that Genesis could still overpower him, because for him to fear it as much must mean that it can work against him. So got the full force of the Grail coming after him in a negative way this time. Before, they wanted you as their Messiah. Now they just want you tortured and dead. They have Cassidy. So, like I said, where things going to be looking like in season 4? I hope it comes back for a fourth season. Sorry, I'm slipping on that. So we can find out. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.